No. Welcome in, everyone, to Flyover Footy. My name is Matt Baker. Thank you for joining us on the live stream, on the YouTube, wherever you're viewing us right now. We are happy to be with you again after somewhat of a break, and I feel our break coincided maybe with absolutely nothing happening for St. Louis City. It's been a while since we've had some news to really dive into, but this week the floodgates kind of opened before the holidays, and to break it all down, because we do have a pretty packed show for you tonight. To break it all down, I'm joined by my friend in soccer, Stuart Holtgren. Stu, how's it going?
That's going pretty well. Very exciting day, and we'll get into that exciting week. And I know both of us are kind of getting over a cold right now, so recovery is also very, very exciting.
Recovery, health into the holidays. This may be the last Flyover Footy before the holidays, depending on what happens with what happens with any roster movements, any signings, sales, transfers, any news over the next couple of weeks. I assume City's going to kind of take it easy on official announcements, so we might have rumors and reports trickle out over the next couple of weeks. That typically seems to be the thing that happens over the holidays. But if this is the last flyover, we're going to make it a good one. I can assure you of that. So, Stu, are you ready to get into the pod recording? Because it seems like we've got a lively chat going. And honestly, if you're as we started going live on this one, before we do the pod recording, as we started going live, I realized that the chat was kind of filling up. People were commenting things, and I had no idea how that was happening. We're using I mentioned a few weeks ago that we're in test mode in this off season, trying to figure some new things out going into next season. And I had not clicked the go live button, so I didn't think we were live. Stu and I are just having a nice chat before we start the pod. And all of a sudden, people are just chatting in the comment section on YouTube. And so I need to figure that out to figure out what was going on there. But if you didn't hear our pre-show chat, I guess that's for the best, or not. We didn't really say anything inappropriate, but here we are. So now we're going to get into the pod recording and dive into pretty much every single topic you can think of. Every single thing I've mentioned, I've seen mentioned in the chat and on socials lately, we will dive into. And if we miss something, if you notice that we're not spending time on something you want, drop it in the chat. We will get to it, I promise. With that, Stu, you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Welcome in, everyone, to Flyover Footy. My name is Matt Baker. Thank you for joining us on this pre-holiday edition of Flyover Footy, where we will dive into a ton of news that has been happening in the world of St. Louis City over the course of the past week or two. And to do it all, I am joined by my friend in soccer, Stuart Holtgren. Stu, how is it going?
Oh, it's going very well. I am I'm excited to be here. It's a very exciting day, a very exciting week. You and I are both getting over a cold, so recovery is exciting as well.
Recovery is exciting as well. We have a jam-packed show for you this evening, and on this episode, we have the news about John Hackworth. That broke during the World Cup draw. We will talk about that in a moment. We have an academy update. The academy teams have called it a fall season, and we've got the latest on what happened at MLS Next Fest, that is. We have information on the Coachella Valley Invitational to talk about. We have as confirmed reports as possible, without it actually being announced by MLS, that the divisions that we had talked about a few weeks ago, beginning in 2027, are happening, and we were pretty much spot on. The map that I showed, I'll bring that back on this episode because it sounds like that's happening. We have end-of-year roster decisions for City 2 to look at. We have SuperDraft results, and oh yeah, we have a new head coach to talk about. Yoann Damet is the new head coach for St. Louis City. That's the main event of this episode. Every single thing before that is just the appetizer. We will get to that in full in just a little bit, but we want to start this show off with the news that John Hackworth is out as technical director of St. Louis City SC. The news broke unceremoniously Friday, December 5th at just before 1 o'clock Central Time during the World Cup group stage draw. Technical director John Hackworth departing the club to become the head coach of the U.S. Naval Academy's men's soccer program ahead of their 2026 season. And this was a shocker, Stu. I'm not just taken aback by the timing, but the news itself. Hackworth had carried the torch from the Lutz Pfannenstiel departure this past summer into the winter, made the decisions. He was the man responsible for Josh Yarrow. He was the man responsible for the end of year roster decisions. He was the man in charge of bridging that gap on the technical side, by and large, between Lutz and Corey Ray. And John Hackworth at that point in time was basically the last man standing from that OG sporting side. We had talked about Vin Coe. We had talked about Lutz Pfannenstiel. Now we talk about John Hackworth. He's been with the organization, had been with the organization since 2021 as director of coaching, as technical director, as interim head coach, interim City 2 head coach twice, and interim sporting director, his most recent title before Corey Ray joined. During his 4 years, he served as all of these, helping shape basically every single piece of the organization. At one point, Lutz Pfannenstiel had referred to him as so important in the technical director role that he couldn't be left to the head coaching duties for St. Louis City. That's how much Lutz relied on him. And in the press release with John Hackworth, Carolyn Kindle made comments, Diego Gigliani made comments, extremely grateful for his willingness to always put the club first while being asked to play so many different roles. But ultimately, Stu, he goes back to where I think most of us know where his passion is and where he probably is best suited, which is the sidelines as a head coaching gig.
Yeah, like you said, he's been around for a long time in St. Louis. He's also an East Coast guy, so he's going back to the East Coast. He's spent a lot of his career, almost all of his career on the East Coast with, Philadelphia Union, USF in college, Wake Forest. He coached over there as well. He kind of journeyed a little bit inland to go over to Louisville City in USL, where he coached for a little bit. But he clearly has a passion for coaching, and I think once, obviously he didn't get a second shot here at promotion. Maybe the writing was on the wall. I was surprised because I know Hack really likes St. Louis. He's a big fan here. Anyone who lives in South City or goes to the Tower Grove Farmers Market might have seen him walking or biking around the area. So he was always a fun one to run into around town. So personally, I'll miss him. What his legacy will be here, I don't know. That's a tough one. Like you said, some of his roster moves at the very end were maybe a little questionable.
And it was always Lutz and Hack, right? That's how we got here. Hack was the director of coaching. He was the man responsible for aligning the direction from the academy to the 2 team to the first team. That was one of his first original gigs. And then he took over for City 2 in the lead up. Bradley Carnell was hired just before City 2 started in 2022, and Hackworth took over that team while Carnell built for the first team. I think Hackworth has to, whether you like what our roster has looked like over the past 3+ years at this point, Hackworth probably has just as much to say about things that have occurred with that roster as Lutz Pfannenstiel, especially on the domestic side. We've talked so many times about the U.S. youth national team connections, whether it be Indiana Vasilev, Akil Watch, all of those players Chris Durkin, who came through the U.S. youth national team and knew John Hackworth. His tentacles reach deep in the U.S. soccer landscape. And I think for better or for worse, that helped to shape our club on the domestic side in the first few years of its existence. And whether you can simplify it that much is debatable, of Hackworth domestic, Lutz foreign or international. You really have to say that as much as we say this roster is constructed and built by Lutz, I would argue that Hackworth had just as much to say for large portions of it. And on the way out, you look at all these players who are coming back next year. This is going to be a topic of conversation, that the players whose options we picked up were picked up by John Hackworth. It's likely that Corey Ray probably would have picked up a lot of them, but you really can't say that. You say John Hackworth did. John Hackworth made some of the decisions in the season as well. Signing a guy like Seth Antwi to a contract in general, that was John Hackworth. And then the last thing that he did right as Corey Ray was getting signed was sign Josh Yarrow for next season, sign him to a new contract. So we need to see what the value is for Yarrow's contract to really evaluate the Hackworth's role in that and whether it was good or bad. It did not have a resounding excitement to it, I could say. So as Hackworth leaves the organization, I urge everyone to look cumulatively at his entire body of work and all of our feelings that we had for him after he was our interim coach, the knowing what he was doing behind the scenes domestically, as opposed to his last thing that he did was sign Josh Yarrow.
Yeah, he was a great servant for the club. He was always a positive figure, smiling face. I won't ever wish any ill upon John Hackworth. So best of luck for him in Navy, and thanks for his time here. And we've turned a new leaf with Ray, and now we have Damet. So we have a new two-headed creature guiding the ship.
We do, and it may be a little more streamlined, different structure that we're going to talk to in a little bit. But to tease some of the Yoann Damet conversation, this is not going to be a straight up a two-headed beast as it was before. It's not going to be Diego Gigliani and Corey Ray as Lutz and Hack were. We're going to have a bit of a different structure that Corey Ray gave us insight to. So that's going to be exciting as well. If you're joining us on our live stream, I'm going to do something that I don't normally do. I'm turning the comments on the screen so we can all see. I'm not going to have time at all to get to these. So I want this is firing up, and I love what you guys are saying, and I want to pick up on it. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that on the screen in this new kind of format we have. I promise if folks are talking about it on the stream and I need to talk about it, I will for our audio listeners. So thank you so much for sticking with us as we figure this new thing out. So we move now from John Hackworth over to the St. Louis City SC Academy. The Academy just finished wrapping up with MLS Next Fest. We're going to run through the results of those teams really briefly before we move on. The U15s, all three teams played 3 times. So you had the U15s, you had the U16s, and you had the U19s. The U15s played Austin FC and defeated them 2-0. They drew Nashville SC 1-1, and they lost to Charlotte FC 4-3. Valiant efforts by the U15s as they ended their fall season. The U16s, they defeated Orlando City 4-3. They defeated the Seattle Sounders 4-3, and they lost to Atlanta United 6-5. That was a shootout. And on this note, Stu, I'm not sure if you can confirm this. I'm pretty sure that the newest phenom for the St. Louis City Academy, Eddie Niles, played at the U16 level at MLS Next Fest, and he was receiving all kinds of glory on this. There were all kinds of accounts on Instagram that cover college soccer, that cover the youth levels, that were calling Eddie Niles one of the top 5, top 10 overall performers at MLS Next Fest. And I have to harken back to his MVP performance last season as a U15 that led into his professional debut with City 2 as a 14-year-old, one of the youngest ever to make his professional debut. 14 years, 9 months, and I can't remember how many days. But Eddie Niles continuing to make waves at the MLS Next Fest. And then we wrap it up with the U19s. They lost to Inter Miami 4-2, lost to Orlando City 3-2, and lost to LAFC 3-1. So an unfortunate performance with the results for the U19s, but a hard-fought effort for them in all 3 games. Stu, anybody in particular besides Eddie Niles that really drew your attention, or were you maybe surprised by the lack of visibility about MLS Next Fest? Because it's often under the radar that these things kind of happen.
Well, I don't think it's too surprising that it's not too many eyes on it. I mean, it's a youth tournament.
Yep.
But for the MLS sickos out there, it's always interesting to watch these, catch some of these guys who are, potentially going to be future MLS players, future U.S. national team players. I remember a few years ago before City started their first season, a lot of us were, had our eyes glued to this tournament when Aaron Hurd came over and we played the first, U16 matches in 2021.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, speaking of Hackworth, he was there. No, Eddie Niles, he's the rising star. He's the star boy right now, kind of the youth academy. Owen Jorgensen and him got a lot of plaudits last year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Is he going to play for the U16s this year? Is he going to see a lot of City 2 minutes? That'll be interesting as it develops. He seems to be destined for a homegrown contract at some point, but maybe just a bit too early to put that on him, that pressure on him.
I mean, it's definitely too early to put the pressure on him. I will 100% agree. I don't know if it's too early to actually sign him to a contract. We've seen the Philadelphia Union do the same thing with, was it Cavan or was it Quinn Sullivan? who had
Kevin Sullivan.
Kevin
Yep.
Sullivan signed when he was 14 off to Man City, I think. And so it's not without precedent that, and that's kind of why I bring it up a few times. Getting the notoriety, winning the MVP, having more opportunities at the youth national team level for a guy like Eddie Niles. And there are a ton of academy players that we will be spotlighting soon in the lead up to next season, because it's worth at least spotlighting some of the bright lights that are appearing, because we still have a lot of homegrown players yet to sign contracts. We have a lot of available homegrowns in our academy, and a few of them are becoming more and more noteworthy. So whether it's getting more time with City 2 next season, as we'll talk about in a minute, the City 2 team is going to look different next year, or signing homegrown contracts and then playing for City 2. I think there is a host of players at various levels of the academy who are about to make a big name for themselves on a stage in St. Louis that they haven't yet before. And so not just if you're a nerd about this kind of stuff or a sicko looking at who's coming up in the academy, but they're going to break through. A lot of these academy kids in the next year or two that we're talking about on the youth national team, they're going to make a name for themselves. We're going to talk about them a whole lot more. But now we talk about preseason 2026. The Coachella Valley Invitational schedule finally came out. It's been rumored for a couple weeks on St. Louis's appearance in it again. This is a tournament that we perennially play at this point. The Invitational continues to grow. It now includes Major League Soccer and NWSL teams. It will run from February 7th until February 21st. But for St. Louis's impact on this, it's a little more reserved than it has been in the past. The CVI, the Coachella Valley Invitational, is held at the Empire Polo Club in Indio, California from February 7th to the 21st. And there will be 12 Major League Soccer teams, 9 NWSL teams, the largest event ever in 2026, as they celebrate this event alongside the 2026 World Cup. So when and where is St. Louis playing? Well, we know it's the Empire Polo Club, but St. Louis has 2 matches in this preseason tournament where we usually have 3. This year we will play on February 7th against Austin FC, and on February 11th against LA Galaxy. February 11th against the LA Galaxy. So St. Louis isn't alone in the not playing 3 games. So St. Louis has their 2 games on the 7th against Austin, the 11th against the Galaxy. Some teams play 3, but City, Charlotte, DC United, and the LA Galaxy are all playing 2, while LAFC actually only appears to be playing 1 game. We do believe there's still going to be another preseason tournament that occurs probably in Florida, as it has been before the Coachella Valley Invitational. So there will likely be a closed-door friendly after Coachella Valley, since the final game for City at Coachella is the 11th, and we play in the regular season on the 21st. So 10-day gap. I'm sure we'll get some kind of friendly to keep the legs fresh, just like we did last year. And so the 2/21 home opener against Charlotte is what it all builds towards. And I'll use this as an opportunity to say that City has their players reporting on January 10th. So that's the date that we're all building towards for 2026 as report date. I think it's a Saturday. So players report, and then that next Monday, the 12th or so, will be probably the first official training. That's the day to circle. That's the weekend to circle as you're trying to think of how much time is Yoann Damet actually going to have with these players? How long will he have for this camp? And how long will they have before their first preseason tournament, which is still to be determined? Coachella Valley is almost assuredly not our first tournament. So this schedule, Stu, where the players report on January 10th, they have a few weeks, maybe a preseason tournament in Florida before, but then the Coachella Valley on the 7th for sure. What do you make of this timeline? And do you think it's going to be enough for Yoann Damet to actually implement what he wants, as well as we still have roster slots to fill?
Yeah, well, and we'll see how he adjusts to the roster that he's been given. I think there'll be a lot of some level of roster change between now and then. Yeah, I mean, he certainly has more time than Nancy had at Celtic. That's not going well, but this will be good. I think he does have the time. January 10th is soon, but he's diving right in. He's eager. You can tell that Corey Ray is very excited. There was something Corey said at the press conference yesterday that, said he liked Yoann's mentality, that he was, you could work with him if he's, had a bad day. And he said, you're around them 20 hours a day. So I think they're both very, they give off the impression of very hard workers who are very eager to dive into everything. So, after January 10th, I think that'll be plenty of time to implement what he has, assuming the players are eager. And Coachella, I'm very interested to see if they broadcast any games this year. Last year, there were some surprise broadcast matches. Currently, I don't see anything on their site for it, but I don't think they usually put that out.
Yeah, I would expect them to have something closer to. I think it was just the week before last year that City announced and they broadcasted on their app, I know, and then there were some backdoor YouTube channels that were made available. I'm expecting it again this year. It would just be nonsense to backtrack on what they did. They're already closed door enough with preseason matches as it is, the closed door friendlies, the lack of I don't think the Florida camp has their games updated, and it's up to individual teams. There's no cohesiveness across Major League Soccer. I will say it again next season. If you didn't like me harping on it again last season, I'm going to do it again this season. Major League Soccer needs to move towards Major League Baseball. They need to move towards the NBA, the NFL, NHL as far as making preseason visible. There's no reason not to. The only reason I continually hear are you have trialists out there. You don't want to be too open, but everybody has their scouts all over the place. Everything is visible to those that it matters for a competitive advantage. If you want to find the information out, you're going to find the information out. Broadcasting it to fans, it just helps grow the game. I think we have to get away from those old days of closing things down, not tipping our hat, showing our cards, telling our secrets, and get into growing the sport. And it begins with preseason. That's when the excitement should be beginning. But instead, everything, especially, I mean, from the MLS season pass of old now to all of the hype around the season, it picks up like the week before, and then you lose all that momentum. So I just don't know why you don't pick it up earlier, put it on Apple, put it out in front of the paywall, even draw some fans in, get the production quality up just the slightest bit. That shouldn't be an impediment. You got to deal with Apple. You have your own production studio. There's just no reason to not broadcast it. And I'll try to make that the last thing I say until January when I invariably go on another diatribe.
Well, MLS didn't even broadcast the draft today, as Chris pointed out. That was very, very frustrating because, it's always interesting. If you're not going to have everyone just release, their picks at once or whatever, just come on, do something. Just have a Weeby and Bogert like you used to in a studio and just talk through things. It doesn't have to be fancy, but enough people are interested that it's just a kind of a real, own goal there by MLS.
Yeah, that's something that, as we talk about the SuperDraft in a minute, the SuperDraft is hugely disappointing in the production over the past few years. Do you remember when we entered the league, and not only did we get to go to Energizer Park and they had fans there, but they had it broadcast. They had reporters in the houses. I remember when Jack Mayer was drafted, Nashville sent a bus that they broadcasted them being at his house when they picked him. That kind of epicness, like that's the unique thing that you could do in Major League Soccer. Make it exciting, have it live, invest the resources, and just make it matter. Make it seem like it matters, because we were having a discussion beforehand about how much time do we really want to spend on our SuperDraft players. And I made the comment, well, do we want to spend so much time on them? Because even Corey Ray in his in an article that Tom Timmerman posted in the Post-Dispatch had alluded to the fact that a 7th pick overall, you start to get in that fringe, maybe depth player. So you're minimizing right off the bat, the knowingness that this is going to be an impactful player on the first team roster. And I think that thought is just an assumption now across the board. There's no real pomp or circumstance or chance given for this to mean anything. It's not going to mean as much as the NFL because it's a different mechanism, different ecosystem that exists between college and the NFL versus college and Major League Soccer. I acknowledge that absolutely, but there's no problem with opening it up in some way. I like the idea that Brian has in the chat. Nothing was blocking a local TV deal. And I'm going to reference the SuperDraft on this. You could broadcast locally. I know he's probably talking about the games, but find a platform to air this. YouTube's a no-brainer. They have Apple. Apple's this streaming giant. It doesn't make sense to block things like this and make them less than they could be. You're killing your product in potential opportunities you have to make new fans or make fans in general aware. Content is king. put something out there and it's like moth to a flame. It's why it kills me when we don't do episodes of Flyover every single week, even if there's nothing to talk about, because content is king. And if you put things out there that are of the slightest bit of quality, people will enjoy it. And I promise you, MLS, that is the case with this kind of stuff.
So next year, just have you, Pete Wood, and some other podcasters broadcast the draft live here in Energizer Park.
Oh, now that's an idea. Make our own little live stream watch party stream. We'll report on all the ones. I like that. I'll have to put in a call to our friend Pete Wood over with City. But Stu, I think we've harped enough on that. Let's harp on something that we have a follow-up on from what I talked about a few weeks ago. And that is the fact that MLS appears to be moving firmly now into the 5-division, 6-team format that we discussed before. It was reported by our friend Bruce McGuire, who said he talked to some contacts in Major League Soccer. And Bruce is a friend who has covered the Minnesota United organization for years and years, back to the NASL days. So he's trustworthy, first of all. I retweeted him because I believed in him. And just maybe a day later, we had a report from Tom Bogert. We had a report from Paul Tenorio confirming via The Athletic that this is the likely path that we'll be going towards in 2027 for divisional realignment. Now, if you look at this and you just think, oh, you're breaking up San Jose and the Galaxy, the California Classico, you're breaking up DC United and their rivalries in the Northeast. That's not exactly what's happening here. This is basically divisions for the purposes of scheduling. I think divisions will play into how the playoffs are seeded. They still haven't figured out the playoff plan, but think about it as every division you have here circled, you're going to play home and away. So that's 2 games per year against your division rivals each. And then every other team you're going to play once a year. One year it's home, the next year it's away. Stu, I think this does 2 things. I think this not only solves the single table conundrum that MLS had gotten themselves into by growing so large. It's not perfect, right? It's not like a Premier League. It's not like Bundesliga where you play every single team the same amount of times, but it's pretty close, and it adds an American twist with the division. So you are playing every single team once. It also has the benefit of knowing for St. Louis, we know what year we're going to play Nashville away. We know what year they're coming home. That helps build excitement for travel. And the other fact is, you're not killing these rivalries that you're separating, which are only 2 teams, essentially. San Jose and the Galaxy. And is it DC and New York, or is it DC and Philly?
DC and Philly.
DC and Philly, sorry. So you're not separating them every year. If anything, I acknowledge that not playing each other twice a year, that's something. But make it a bigger event. Make it the Rose Bowl for the Quakes and the Galaxy every single year. Make the California Classico this big once-a-year event, because I remember when LAFC entered the league and they had El Tráfico, it seemed like every other week for a period of time. And between MLS, between the playoffs, Leagues Cup, whatever it was, they were playing each other a ton. And it dilutes the value of that rivalry if you're playing each other so many times. We had the same thing with SKC in the first season. We played them, 5 times, counting the playoffs in the first season. That's too much. That you can build a rivalry, but you don't want to submerge it underwater and drown it right from the beginning. So good for local rivalries, good to keep these that have to be separated still alive, and good for the single table in my eyes. What do you think of this whole thing?
Yeah, like you said, it's basically the closest we can get to having a balanced schedule. We're never going to do one, home and away for every club. It's just not feasible. So I think these divisions are great. RSL and Colorado are always going to kind of be the ones that can't be solved in a situation like this. Where are you going to put them? So this is the best geographic solution. And I think if I was a Quakes fan, I would be angry. I mean, it would be bad, but as a City fan, this is the best possibility. We could have gotten Nashville too, but Nashville always has to be with Atlanta in this league. So
exactly.
So, it's great. And the people who should be especially happy are the people in Chicago, who they can take a train to Minnesota directly, to, Kansas, to St. Louis, to Cincinnati. Columbus doesn't have an Amtrak, which is weird, but it'll be great. And
it's not a bad drive. It's not a bad drive to Columbus.
Yeah, it's not a bad drive. 7 hours or so, I guess. But It'll be fantastic. It's just great away days as long as MLS doesn't schedule them on Tuesdays or Wednesdays like they're doing this year.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it only takes me 6 to get to Columbus, to be fair. But that's what Minnesota would be the furthest drive, but you've got the Amtrak, you've got a direct flight, nonstop flight. So that's not terrible. Yeah, 5 to Cincy, 6 to Columbus, not bad at all. Driving for those teams within 6 hours, and then Minnesota is just a puddle jump. I've made it. It's a great away day. And the other option, so if you're feeling a little iffy, could this change? Could this disrupt what we have in this Midwest? I would say the answer is no. Of all of these groupings, the Midwest seems to be one of the most safe because Paul Tenorio and Tom Bogert also said the other potential groupings would include keeping the 4 California teams together and grouping the Cascadia teams with the Texas teams. So the other option is what some people have posted where you circle up San Jose, LAFC, LA Galaxy, and San Diego FC with RSL and the Colorado Rapids. And then you have the 3 Cascadia teams, Vancouver, Seattle, and Portland, group with the 3 Texas teams, Dallas, Austin, and Houston. It keeps the local California rivalries. It still keeps Texas. It still keeps Cascadia. But holy cow, Stu, is that a terrible travel plan from the Cascadia teams to Texas? That sounds like a nightmare for a lot of their games.
Yeah, and I mean, those fans, and I mean, think about if you're an FC Dallas fan, now you have all those, West Coast divisional games. You're not going to want that. So, I mean, I guess they still do in this situation, but yeah, that travel would have been a nightmare. And there's no winning, but the Eastern half of these 3 divisions are just about, chef's kiss perfect.
Yeah.
I like it. I really like it. And I'm really excited for when this kicks off. And, when Chicago has their new stadium in 2028, it's going to get better.
Absolutely. The other thing to know is when this starts. So it's still being discussed on whether this will occur during the switch to the calendar of the 27-28 season, starting around, I think it's late July 2027, that goes until April with the playoffs in May of 28. Or if they'll go ahead and, dive in with 2 feet and make this change for the sprint season that will occur at the beginning of 2027. All we know is this is expected to change and occur sometime in 2027. And I personally am looking forward to it. I think you are too, Stu. So we hope to get more information on how the playoff picture looks for this and a lot more details and confirmation that this is the final plan. With that, we have one more bit of news to talk about before we get into the Super Draft and before we get into the main event. Yoann Damet signed as the new city coach, and it's the one that occurred today as we are streaming, or it's occurred the other day, rather. It's the City 2 roster decisions. So we have 7 players aged 24 and above that are departing the club now. We have declined options for Emil Jääskeläinen. We have declined options for Colin Welsh. And 8 players are out of contract. Dita Armstrong, Ryan Betcher, Cam Silly, Lucas Dimitra, Larson Hackworth, Mateo Kidd, Juan Kuzain, and Gabby McKenna. Some pretty core pieces of City 2 this past season are departing the club. McKenna, Cam Silly, Mateo Kidd, Emil Jääskeläinen, Colin Welsh played a good amount in goal. Dita Armstrong was made perennial appearances. Larson Hackworth was injured and ended up, I think by the end of his career with City 2 now, he was an assistant coach for the U16 side, actually. That was kind of fascinating. Writing's probably on the wall with John Hackworth leaving as opposed to what Larson's future was. Stu, what do you make of these roster decisions as it pertains to the future of St. Louis City 2?
Well, it definitely seems that Corey Ray has a different approach to City 2 than what the previous administration did. So, like you said, there's 7 departing players over the age of 24. So are we going to concentrate on development with young guys and maybe not win as many games? That might not be quite as appealing for people who go to City 2 games for the excitement and the wins on Sundays. But I think watching the young guys cut their teeth is going to be exciting as well. So I'm excited about it. I mean, a lot of these guys were great. I loved seeing Juan Kuzain play for years. I mean, he was an old St. Louis FC Academy guy. So was Mateo Kidd. Ryan Betcher, Cam Silly. Betcher went out on loan with Union Omaha and actually did well there after he left. They're a reserve side in the third division of American soccer. There's going to be a lot of turnover regardless. And I mean, you can't say they aged out, but I mean, at this point in time, they've probably, what they are and what their ceiling is.
There's a question in the chat from David McDonald. Do these City 2 roster moves have anything to do with style philosophy changes under Damet? I would say less style. I would say less style change and more philosophy change. This does seem to be a philosophical shift in how City 2 is utilized. I made a note specifically: 7 players aged 24 or above are among these departing 10 players. And that's a big deal because City 2 had been, I would say, 50-50 of you have some academy kids getting some of these amateur contracts. You have some young players, maybe SuperDraft age young. So looking at 21, 22 years old. But then you've got a host of, I would say, they could be USL League One lifers. They could be pushing USL championship level, but they've been anchoring City 2 and arguably helping City 2 to beat up on their competition perennially for the past 3-4 years. With this does seem to signal potentially, we won't know until we start to see some signings and the SuperDraft players will probably land with City 2. But you look at what Corey Ray did with Crew 2, and he did not use them because Corey Ray, before he came here, was the GM for Crew 2 while being an assistant GM for Columbus Crew. He did not use the Crew 2 as this tweener mechanism to just win games. He was developing players. Jason Russell Rowe, chief among them. Patrick Schulte was his draft pick that he had over there, and he leveraged him with Crew 2 before jumping up to Crew. That's what Corey Ray, I would bet dollars to dimes, any colloquial phrase you want to use, that Corey Ray is now going to be using City 2 more as a pipeline than what we've been seeing it before. And I've had concerns. I've had worries that our pipeline in our organization has been going well from the academy to City 2. But I mean, honestly, Stu, check me on this if you feel different. It feels like it's been stymied from City 2 to City. We haven't really had consistent jumps or multiple players per year. And when they do make jumps, it's out of necessity, not because they've necessarily earned it or beat out somebody or deserve playing time if you have a healthy City roster. We've had a lot of players sign from City 2, but how quickly have they turned over? We don't have any SuperDraft players left on our roster from the first 3 seasons outside of Brendan McSorley. Miguel Perez jumped in early, and then he fell off the face of the earth for a hot minute before jumping back with City 2. The ebbs and flows with City 2, yes, the winning has been there, but the developmental path up to City has been out of necessity, and then you're dumped when you're done with these 1-year contract with options, as opposed to true growth that's sustainable from City 2 to City.
Yeah, and there's also going to be a place for a guy who's maybe a tweener on the roster for a leadership point of view. I'm looking at 2022 Columbus Crew 2's roster, and they had Marco Micheletto, who was kind of a journeyman guy who signed to them, and he won the MLS Next Pro title in 2022 with them, and he was let go after 2023, and he moved on to a different, lower league club. Yeah, the approach is going to be different. What we've been doing it for is to stem the bleeding. If we have injuries, as Seth Antley, who, they're getting their cup of coffee after putting in the work and getting rewarded, but where are they now? Like you said, they're not around. So the value just doesn't seem to be there from maybe even a business perspective.
Yeah, and you're not going to develop 5-6 players per year. That's not what I'm saying. And in the chat, I love seeing Drew Young out there. Drew has it right. Makai Joyner is the blueprint to me, where you've got a kid who just sets the world on fire in City 2. He doesn't have to score a ton of goals because we're talking defenders, midfielders here too, but he plays out of his mind for a period of time. He puts himself on the map with a golden boot, or maybe you got a guy who's a defensive player of the year nominee, goalkeeper, all those things. And then they get their chance, and then they become consistent squad rotation players. They're making the match day rosters. They're getting their 30 minutes. The great thing about MLS Next Pro and MLS is the flexibility you have for that kind of a player. MLS has a lot of problems. They have a lot of critics, and a lot of them are warranted. I personally think the flexibility in the rules related to MLS Next Pro and the players on the first team roster is perfectly suited to this conversation, where you have a Mekhi Joyner. You sign a Mekhi Joyner to a homegrown contract. He is on the first team. He has a first team contract. How many times last season were people saying sign him to a first team contract? He was signed to a first team contract. That's what this is so perfect about, because he can play for City 2 for an entire season. There's like 2 slots that you're allowed to loan a player down. There's slot 31, and then there's a season-long loan you could do. These slots are perfect for a Tyson Pierce and a Mekhi Joyner. Give them time after you sign him to a contract, or you don't sign him to a contract. Just give them time in City 2. You have the short-term loans to call them up, see if they're ready, gut check them. But we haven't been able to do that to the benefit of the players themselves. Like you've said, we did it to stop the bleeding. And if we didn't have to do it to stop the bleeding, we could have these short-term loans to give guys minutes. Maybe a guy needs a rest. Maybe you need to rest 2 or 3 players. In the next few seasons, it's going to be a problem with fixture congestion, with the midweek matches coming back, with the Open Cup, hopefully making a run in there. The league matches, especially when you do have the restrictions for short-term loans, that the ideal way is to give these guys chances, see how they compete, give them more chances, continue to push them, as opposed to only bring them up when you're required. And that's how you burn through them so quick. So Fatbug's question, what should that pathway look like if you have an idea? That's what this pathway should look like. I don't expect a ton of players per year to be getting minutes like Joyner has, because Joyner has done extremely well with them. But I do expect maybe 1 or 2 to start pushing that envelope each year. And we just haven't seen that. And in my eyes, we've seen the opposite. We have seen a misuse by the coaching staff, by the coach in certain ways, where Mekhi Joyner's short-term loans were burned because, among other things, he made a 2 or 3 minute appearance in a game under Olaf Melberg, burned one of his short-term loans when he was back when. And that kind of misuse, coupled with only bringing guys up when you have to, these are problems. And I want that to be a thing that is fixed with this organization as Corey Ray takes over, as Yoann Damet takes over, and as City 2 seems to have this turnover.
Yeah, and another thing City 2 has done or did well in 2025 is they did have some of the academy guys cut their teeth before. They're not even staying in the City 2 ecosystem.
Sure.
Guys like Kai Yeager and Jack DiMaria, who are freshmen at SLU and just had that incredible, College Cup run. They made their City 2 debuts in 2025.
That's right.
So, keep an eye on some of these academy guys who make their debut for City 2 this year. And they may, come back again someday. So there's multiple approaches, and I think you hit the nail on the head, though, on what to expect as far as the 2 to senior squad.
Well, let's move on now to the prelude to the main event, the event that happened today as we're recording this Thursday, December 18th. It's the SuperDraft. St. Louis ended up with 3 players in the SuperDraft. We went into the SuperDraft with 2 picks. We came away with 3 players. First round, 7th overall pick, Zach Lillington. Second round, 37th overall, Andrew Samuels. And second round, 43rd overall, Cooper Forcellini. Did I get that right, Stu? Forcellini?
I don't know, but that sounds right.
Forcellini was a draft pick obtained via a $50,000 GAM trade. So we ended up trading into the second round to take Cooper Forcellini. And hopefully I don't have to say Forcellini too many times in case I'm saying it incorrectly. But let's circle back and let's take a look at our first round draft pick, Zach Lillington. Zach Lillington comes to us from UC Davis. He was named the second team All Big West. He is a defender by trade, though that's arguable on where our team actually predicts that he'll play. I've seen a defensive midfielder. I've seen a right center back. I've seen somebody who covers UC Davis online was telling me he plays on the left side as more of an inverted fullback or inverted winger. He was named the top right center back in the SuperDraft class by MLSsoccer.com as they listed out their different positions. From what I've read, primarily a center back, but extremely versatile. And when I say extremely versatile, I mean, I think ASA, American Soccer Analysis, had him listed as a holding midfielder and one of the top holding midfielders in the entire draft. He's a top 10 overall player projected by ASA. And our ability to get him, I think he was the only top 10 player that was chosen in maybe the entire first round, but definitely in the early part of the draft. Important to note that he is not a Generation Adidas signing, which means two things. He is not signed to a contract already, and he's not guaranteed a roster spot. So that still needs to be worked out. So even the first round draft pick here, not guaranteed to be on the City roster at all. And it follows suit from last season where Emilia Jeskalainen was the first round draft pick and ended up signing for City too. So profile seems to be, he played in 68 games, 138 shots, 8 goals, 9 assists in his career at UC Davis. And if you look at the video the City put out, because they put highlight videos out for their few players, Lillington is aggressive at the very least. He's got a nice cross with his left foot. He's aggressive on the defense. He likes to press. He will make players uncomfortable. He's good with the ball. He had a couple really nice ball handling moves to avoid defenders. So at first glance, it seems like he's got a lot of the characteristics and flexibility that Corey Ray and Yoann Damet might want for a player. What do you make of Zach Lillington?
Well, yeah, he's a Swiss Army knife. You hit on it. And Corey Ray actually told the Post-Dispatch today a really interesting thing. Mm-hmm. He said Yoann's ideas require some pretty multifunctional players and people who are comfortable in different areas of the pitch at different times of the game. That fluidity sometimes creates uncertainty in the defense that we're playing against. And if we can get these guys with structure and allow them the freedom to interpret the different parts of the game, that will give us a real edge over our opposition. He is certainly someone with a very unique profile. I don't think I've seen a lot like that in the past. So, yeah, they really like this guy who's a center back, attacking mid, holding midfielder, inverted wing back. So he's 6'4" also. So he's a big guy to play, that wing back position. I had no idea who he was before the draft. So I can't say I'm an expert, but it's exciting. I mean, the various chats we're in, I think the amount of excitement was more than I expected after today's draft.
There were some deep stats. Credit to our friend Chat City Tactics for dropping some deep stats on the value that this player provides, and I hope he drops some of that knowledge on X and Blue Sky, because there's a reason to be excited about Zach Lillington. Not saying he's going to be pressing for a starting role in City next season. We're not that optimistic about everything, but I do think that we have a quality player on our hands. And I'm glad you said that quote from Corey Ray, because when he was describing that to Tom Timmerman, the first thing that came to mind is how we saw the Columbus Crew play against us at Energizer Park, where they are just not just passing it all around us and making us just chase our tails in our defensive third, but how the movements were. You had your right back move all the way up into the left wing side of the field. I'm picturing players who are comfortable and confident to take the ball, take the space wherever it might be on the field, and knowing that you have others to cover your area, but also knowing how to play that area that you're ending up in. To me, that's kind of that's the bread and butter of what Ray is describing there, of players able to be versatile and make those movements in different spaces. When I visualize what that means, it's not just not boring, but it's some of the most exciting soccer I've objectively seen from any team. I enjoy watching the Columbus Crew because of what they're able to do with the ball, how they're able to stretch the field and put the players in unfamiliar positions that really confuses defenses. And if we are able to take even a sliver of that to start next season, and that's the profile that we're building our roster around, those are the kinds of players that are comfortable doing that, moving into different parts of the field, playing different positions throughout. Now, I'm not necessarily talking to Timo Baumgartel who presses into the striker role. I'm talking a little more intentional, little more graceful than that. But if we're able to, if that's the approach that we're taking to our roster build and to our style of play, sign me up.
Yeah, man, so exciting. I know we'll get into the other 2 draft picks that we made. Yep. I'm just going to make a quick segue over to another interesting thing that happened at the very top part of the draft. Is Colorado Rapids drafted a player from Rapids 2. Very interesting player. His last name was Diop. He was born and raised in Senegal. He's signed to a pro contract for MLS Next Pro. Didn't go to NCAA, but he was made draft eligible by MLS, and I think they found out today about that.
Yep.
So they burned a high draft pick to hold on
Keep
to
him.
the teen striker that they really like. That's just, one of those things. Like, could we not have gotten a MLS 360 studio moment that broke that down? Because that would have been great.
I mean, we complain about not knowing the MLS roster mechanisms in the past, and that being something we're excited for Corey Ray to come lead our team in. I mean, how upset could you have been in that Rapids room, that war room, when you found out that you were about to lose one of your top prospects from your 2 team and you had to burn a pick? I think the Colorado Rapids had like 6 picks in this draft, but also how upset were you at the person in the MLS front office who found that out and called you on it and made that happen? That is just a wild story buried in this super draft.
Yeah, the type of things that we love to see. What do you think about our other picks?
Honestly, I might be most excited about our second pick, but I'm going to have to wait on my excitement. Our second round pick is Andrew Samuels, a goalkeeper from Princeton. He's Ivy League Defensive Player of the Year, all Ivy first team. We took him with our natural second round pick, 37th overall, 7th pick in the second round. He's a tall guy, 6'5", 190 pounds. This past season was, I didn't follow Princeton, but wow, was he a special player this season. Started all 19 games, had a program record 12 shutouts, 0 goals allowed in league play. He was named to the Mac Hermann Trophy midseason watch list. And I think his only goals allowed were in the playoffs, potentially, at least when playing league opponents. But he didn't allow goals this year. I mean, you look at the highlights on this guy, and he uses every single inch, every single centimeter of that 6'5" frame to block shots. The vision seems to be on point, at least from the caliber of play in college. He's using his body extremely well. And because he has that huge frame, he's able to cover a ton of ground. Now, he is a junior. And so, again, from the information that Corey Ray shared with Tom Timmerman, it does sound like Andrew Samuels is going back to college next year. So we have his rights, and we'll be waiting for him on the other side of his senior year, where we would let him get a little more exposure, a little more experience, hopefully continue to progress. And then, we can bring him back when Roman Berkey has one more season left on his contract, have him learn under Roman Berkey, and then maybe this is our goalkeeper of the future. What do you think?
I think it's a great idea. I mean, I was confused at first when we drafted keeper, not knowing that he would go back to school, but it made a lot more sense after that, because next year we have Olivares under contract.
Yep.
We have Ben Lunt under contract, and we have Roman Berkey under contract. Lunt and Berkey under contract for 26 and 27, Berkey with an option for 28. So, I mean, Corey Ray did draft Patrick Schulte, and Patrick Schulte spent, I believe, a year and a half really with Columbus Crew 2 before he spent a year or half a year learning under Evan Bush at Crew senior side. So I trust his judgment on that. Andrew Samuels was the lone recommended player by American Soccer Analytics or analysis for that position, which was a little bit of a surprise. I think there were some people locally clamoring for Jeremy Avenal, the SLU goalkeeper.
For sure.
Who's absolutely a great entertainer, fantastic player. He's also going to be 26 in May of 2026. So if it really didn't make any sense to draft him and then stick him where for 2 years, and what's the return going to be? So, Samuels makes sense. Most of the time when you hear about MLS keepers who break through and are starters, they're drafted in the first round, but it sounds like this kid could have gone in the first round easily.
If you haven't seen a picture of this guy, check out either our YouTube video or on our Instagram. He looks like he's got that goalkeeper swagger. For a junior in college, he seems like he's got what the knack for being a keeper and that gravitas that you have to have. But we'll watch him at Princeton this year, and we'll look forward to seeing him in the 2027 season, whether it's the sprint season or beyond that. But probably looking for City 2 after that, and then following the Patrick Schulte motif and the game plan is there are worse things you could do. If he follows that model, I think we'd be in pretty good shape in a post Roman Berkey era. But that wasn't our final pick either. Cooper Forcellini ended up being the shocker pick as St. Louis obtained in a trade with Orlando for $50,000. They obtained their pick in the second round, the 43rd overall, and we used it on Cooper Forcellini, a midfielder senior out of Xavier. He is 6'1", 160 pounds, I think that says. All Big East first team, United Soccer Coaches All East third team. He played every minute of every game that he played this season. 15 games played and started, 1,090 minutes, 10 goals, 2 assists, 31 shots, 19 shots on target. And Forcellini was a number 10 with Xavier, and he's projected to be a box-to-box, which admittedly on MLSsoccer.com and others, they do call out that this is one of the most difficult positions to translate into the professional leagues. I don't want to liken it too much to John Klein, but that's kind of the vibes that I get from how he, not necessarily the profile, just the idea of that position and how it could translate and where he could be, where he could project. This is a big unknown for me. And like you said earlier, Stu, I do want to level set. I'm not pretending to be an expert on all these college kids. I lend heavily on the experts. I lean on them to provide us with some of the data like the ASA, like MLS Soccer, like Draft Utopia. If you don't follow Draft Utopia, that's an excellent resource for all things drafts in every sport. And they do a great job covering Major League Soccer. Getting the picks and projecting the picks is a fool's errand. I barely touch into that sometimes, but I'm more interested in trying to figure out why we took certain players. But this was a player who, if nothing else, should remain on our radar because Corey Ray specifically traded back into the draft to obtain him. There's something about Cooper that Ray wants to give a shot at because we otherwise could have just passed and not taken any player. Anything you've read or any other note you've got on Forcellini?
The only thing I noticed or immediately popped out to me was that he's a Kansas kid. So it would be extra sweet if we converted him to a city legend somehow down the line, but or if he could just have a moment against Sporting Kansas and kind of twisted the knife a little bit there.
Well, besides the SuperDraft, it has been a quiet few weeks. We've had the re-entry drafts, we've had waiver draft, we've had free agency. And in general, Major League Soccer, there hasn't been much to talk about. At St. Louis, there haven't really been anything to talk about. So this super draft was a very welcome breath of fresh air to be able to focus on actual players, players joining the organization, not city signings necessarily yet. But this is our biggest insight yet into the roster that Corey Ray, the profiles that Corey Ray is looking to bring into this organization. That's why it matters the most to me to evaluate some of these players, even if they're not going to see minutes with City anytime soon. And obviously with Samuels, he's not going to see any time with the organization anytime soon. But it's important to look at the profiles because that gives you an insight into the type of player that Corey Ray is looking to bring in, that flexibility, the versatility, knowing that we want to keep her down the line. He's looking long-term into this, and he's using this draft as a mechanism to bolster us in some of those depth areas. We didn't have big signings elsewhere. I think some of the only other big signings I've seen are like Walker Zimmerman to Toronto. John Bell, if you consider that big, went to Austin. The biggest one's probably Dane St. Clair, honestly. I don't know how my entire social media feed became overwhelmed with Dane St. Clair news. Maybe it's because I followed Bruce with some of the Minnesota stuff, but holy cow, was that a fervor this week with Dane St. Clair declining a $1 million plus offer from Minnesota United to be one of the top 5 paid goalkeepers to join Inter Miami and basically say, I'm good on the money. I want to play with Messi and try to win a championship. That's been kind of wild, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I can't really blame the guy for wanting to play with Messi, but to kind of torch your fan base like that and torch the loons. I mean, that one's going to sting for a bit. Some other interesting ones that were going down. Paul Rothrock was rumored to be connected to both Nashville and I believe San Jose. I think he was in advanced talks to San Jose. And now it turns out it looks like he's going to go back to Seattle. So Rothrock was one of those really interesting guys who he's getting in his prime. And I believe Chat City Tactics actually described him as our Cooper Forcellini as our own Rothrock. So, putting that out into the world and hoping that becomes truth, because Rothrock's a great, interesting guy, but he was probably the most interesting of the draft or the free agency for me.
I agree. You're listening to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS, and we are ready for the main event. Stu, are you ready to dive into Yoann Damet being signed as the new St. Louis City head coach, officially announced on Tuesday, December 16th, just one day after the reports broke from Tom Bogert that we were in the final stages of negotiations and that Damet was our demand. The comments from St. Louis City are basically glowing about how ready he is from growing from an assistant up to the first level of head coaching. I'm going to read some comments from Corey Ray. Yoann has all the attributes we were looking for in a manager and aligns closely with the vision and direction we have for this team. He has invaluable experience working with some of the best teams and coaches in the league that I'm sure will help him get the best out of our players. Yoann is ambitious, competitive, and does an exceptional job communicating his soccer ideas, but most importantly, he values people and relationships. Having worked together before, we already share a foundation of trust, which I think will be beneficial as we move the team forward. And that piece right there is something that we're going to come back to, the fact that Yoann Damet and Corey Ray have a history together from the Columbus Crew. And if you're going to bring history together from a certain organization, the Crew are probably one of the top 5 easily that you want to bring from. Ray goes on to say, on the field, he will build on the club's intense, high work rate identity while adding a more proactive, ball-focused dimension to our style, which will give us the best chance to be consistently competitive and entertain our fans. Stu, first thought on the signing, whether it's take this anywhere you want, tactics, style of play, comments from Ray, things you know about Damet.
I mean, Damet was he was a guy who seemed to be the handpicked successor of Wilfred Nancy, who left recently from the Crew. So the fact they didn't sign him was a little surprising, but that could have been a sign that he was already interviewing with us when Nancy left. Quite possibly, I'm not sure, but he's one of the hottest young coaching prospects in MLS right now. So from that perspective, it's exciting. I think Courtois was one that I had grown to get excited about. He was kind of on social media. He was following a lot of people, so that's always an interesting thing. So yeah, I'm interested in Damet from his potential. He's a very interesting guy since he's been coaching for so long from such a young age, and he's still young. But I wouldn't put much weight into, say, his FC Cincinnati interim coaching days. Yeah, and I think you'll go into his history a little bit more, but I'll just say don't put too much weight on his USL performance.
Well, let's look at it right now. Let's talk about Damet's resume. Yoann Damet is 35 years old, first of all. So he's one of the youngest coaches. When he took over the interim job for FCC, I think he was the youngest head coach ever in Major League Soccer at the time. He's been coaching since he was 16 years old. So he realized early on, and he's told us this at the press conference this week, that he wouldn't have what it takes to be a professional player, talked with his family and his coaches. And so he pivoted quickly to coaching. So 35 years old today in 2025. Back in 2006 through 2011, he was a youth coach in France at the U11 through U17 levels, bounced up and down those ranks. And then in 2014, he was a youth coach in the Montreal Impact organization. 2014 to 2017, he spent with Montreal coaching their U12 and U18 levels. Fast forward after that, he was picked up by FC Cincinnati in 2017 in the USL. And I do believe 2017, they were still the USL, not the USL championship yet, right?
Yeah, 2017, but they may have gotten their MLS. No, that was in the middle of their MLS.
Yeah.
Period.
So he was brought in to be the FC Cincinnati assistant coach. And so that was in the USL. He remained the assistant coach in 2017, 2018 in USL. And then if you're familiar at all with FC Cincinnati's story about coming into Major League Soccer, they finished 2018 crushing the USL League, being unceremoniously dumped from the playoffs in 2018. And then their ownership decided that they were going to take basically the entirety of their roster that they had, the coaching staff, the assistants, and they were crushing the league so hard in USL. And I say this tongue in cheek because of what their fans were saying in the USL, but they crushed the league so hard they were going to transfer that exact model essentially from USL to Major League Soccer. They were going to self-promote. They were going to promote themselves because they bought into MLS, and holy cow, was it a dumpster fire. We will talk about the record that FC Cincinnati had in their first 3 seasons, but suffice to say, they won the wooden spoon in all 3 of their first 3 seasons in Major League Soccer. It was a disaster. And that disaster is personified by the fact that Yoann Damet spent 2 stints as interim head coach in 2019 and 2020 with FC Cincinnati. His record was pretty poor, but everything associated with FC Cincinnati during that time period was a dumpster fire. It was awful. It is a borderline miracle that Yoann Damet was able to survive that as a head coach, as an assistant coach, go on in 2022 to be part of the LA Galaxy organization, head coach of Galaxy 2, assistant Galaxy coach, and then get back on his feet enough after that debacle in FC Cincinnati. And I know this isn't his thing. Stu's right. None of it reflects on Yoann Damet, to me, to us, to anybody that was watching at the time. 2023 to 2025, he was the Columbus Crew assistant coach. And this is where all of the positivity comes from. His time under Wilfried Nancy had him win MLS Cup in 2023 and win Leagues Cup in 2024. He learned from the best. Celtic experience lately notwithstanding, but he learned from the best in Major League Soccer under Wilfried Nancy. And that negative experience in Cincinnati, the highest of highs with Columbus, lowest of lows with Cincinnati, all of that has molded Yoann Damet into the person that he is. The styles of play he's implemented, he's experienced, he's led himself, has all led him to where he is now in St. Louis. So which part of these, Stu, do you think is like the most beneficial part to bring into St. Louis? Is it the fact that he's seen the worst of the worst, he's experienced the best of the best, or, I mean, is it the easy way out and just said it's good that he has both?
Well, I'm going to go back to what you said at the very, very beginning, where you said he realized he wasn't cut out and he wasn't going to make it as a player, so he pivoted. He pivoted at age 16. That's a lot of maturity there to make that decision. So that's the first I heard of it. So that, to me, that impresses me. Otherwise, his Crew pedigree, I think, is really impressive. Even though his time as interim of FC Cincinnati, never ended exactly well, he was highly regarded throughout his time at FC Cincinnati. So you'll read and see FC Cincinnati fans speaking pretty positively about him. You'll see Crew fans speaking pretty positively about him. But a lot of these guys are unknowns to some level until they're known. So I think he's earned his shot with us to get his MLS opportunity.
I do want to say I had a chance to talk to our friend Tyler Fisher from Massive Report over in Columbus, and Fisher told me Damet was a part of Nancy's right hand. Him and Kwame worked closely with him, Wilfried Nancy, more so Kwame behind the scenes, but you would see Damet up and on the touchline at times. I would say he was responsible for really getting Nancy's message through. As I said, they had limited access to their assistant coaches, which is not surprising to anybody. We don't have access to our assistant coaches. But he goes on to say Damet was definitely a candidate that Columbus fans wanted. He was familiar with Nancy's style of play, easygoing with players. Though it wouldn't have been Nancy, Damet wouldn't have an extension. He would be an extension of Nancy. So tactically, nothing would have changed. So that's what Columbus fans were expecting. Wilfried Nancy goes to Celtic, and they expected almost that Yoann Damet would be the next man up. They would promote him. He'd carry on the identity. He would continue with the successful tactics that Wilfried Nancy had implemented. And then I referenced it earlier this week to Brendan Weezy on KTRS. It was a borderline coup, I felt, that we were able to get Yoann Damet. The timing just worked out so perfect almost, where Corey Ray comes on board early November, gets his bearings, figures things out. The head coaching search really picks up just as Wilfried Nancy is leaving and Yoann Damet is looking for opportunity, and he chooses us as opposed to Columbus. Now, it doesn't come down to that as just black and white, obviously, but that's something. We spent so much of this offseason frustrated as fans because we felt that maybe the process was taking too long. Maybe coaches didn't want to be coaching St. Louis City. They didn't want to get involved with this organization. We wouldn't be able to attract the top caliber or coaches that other teams were vying for. And I think we do have to appreciate that this seems to be the inverse of that Yoann Damet was desired by Columbus Crew fans, likely by the Crew organization, because they haven't hired a head coach yet. There's joking going around that Wilfried Nancy is performing so bad at Celtic with all the rumors of him being sacked after just 2 weeks that the Crew can now just wait for him to come back. They likely wanted him. They were entertaining him as an option. The fans wanted him, and now St. Louis landed him. That has to be appreciated. That Corey Ray even said himself during the introductory press conference that part of this process is that Damet was entertaining options. He was being pursued, and I think that's something to appreciate as a St. Louis City fan because of all that we've went through mentally and ourselves in the frustration over the past few months. I know that was a breath of fresh air to hear him say that. And kind of along those same lines, I want to dive into the press conference a little bit and some comments made. So I want to get your thoughts on some of this, Stu. Corey Ray in particular talked about the timeline, noting that since he was hired on November 3rd, he had himself a pre-populated list and worked on creating alignment with Diego to find who they wanted as their head coach. Corey Ray noted that they had a long short list and a short final list after some of these strategic discussions. Ray knows a lot of people. He's got good contacts and ability to know what people are like. And I think this is another notch in the belt for how St. Louis was able to land Yoann Damet. It was Corey Ray's connection to him. Ray in the press release said that they worked together, and they did for 2 years in Columbus, where Ray was the assistant GM and GM for Crew 2, and Yoann Damet was the assistant coach for the Columbus Crew. Ray noted that in this hiring, there was, yes, complete alignment. This was the drinking word of the day for this press conference, where you could really have a bad time if you took a drink every time Corey Ray or Yoann Damet said the word alignment. They were all in on this word. And tongue in cheek afterwards, Ray did acknowledge it just kind of got out of hand and they just kind of ran with it afterwards. They was funny after the fact, but they did reference it a lot. In the context of ownership, Diego, Ray, and Damet. That alignment is incredibly important strategically because that is the verticality of leadership in this organization now. You have your CEO of Carolyn Kindle and the board of the Taylor family and the Kavanaughs. You have Diego Gigliani as the president and GM. You have Corey Ray as the sporting director, who by all accounts, especially from today at the SuperDraft, the sporting department is Corey Ray's. And then below Corey Ray, you have Yoann Damet. And it's not a multi-headed monster like Lutz and Hack might have been. Everything starts to get a little horizontal from there. And you have more of a traditional org chart that we'll talk about in a minute. But as far as the process goes, Ray did say there was a multi-round interview process, and it was clear they were in a good place to land Yoann, but the challenges that included his own opportunities with potential suitors. And I think this is the thing to me. So, Stu, do you view this like I do, that we kind of landed a coveted valued property in Yoann Damet?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And Columbus Crew also paid LA Galaxy for Damet's rights. They paid to negotiate with him to make him an assistant coach. So they clearly highly rated him at the time. And he's just been, this up and comer for a long time. I caught that at the start of the press conference where Ray said that about the long short list and the short final list. I thought he put that well.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to see Ray's handprint on this, and I hope he's given a long leash to kind of make that alignment happen between him and Damet.
Ray himself had some interesting comments. But borderline, I was more interested in what Corey Ray was saying versus Yoann Damet. It was good to get to know Damet, and I urge, if you haven't listened to the press conference, go back and listen to it, because Yoann Damet is very personable. And Corey Ray described him as a warm personality, a great human who's a clear communicator that we'll all see, talking about the media, talking about staff and players. He says Damet remains a calm head during the good and the bad. This is where I went back about his experience with FC Cincinnati and the Columbus Crew. He knows how to handle, he knows how to stay consistent. And he had some good comments, Yoann Damet did, about level-headed, not getting too carried away with the good and not going too deep into the bad. Ray said that Yoann Damet is open-minded, a modern thinker, and able to evolve with trends. He seeks out new ideas and has a critical and strong idea of how he sees the game and how he wants to play. Comes from a winning organization, knows how to win, And I think this modern philosophy is going to lend him well with a lot of the fluidity that we talked about back in the SuperDraft conversation. When we were making those discussions about player profiles, this modern look is definitely something. And on signing players, when you talk about not just the profile, but who we're looking to sign, I asked Corey Ray about kind of what they're looking for in signing players. And Ray said, this is probably the most pertinent thing as far as a window into their priorities. There are obvious answers in terms of openings. It's clear there are certain positions to target first. And as discussions evolve, we're going to focus on profiles, squad evolution over the next 6 to 12 months. In short term, Ray said, we have a need on the back line that needs to be addressed. And then we'll work on the rest as we look at profiles. On timelines, Ray said that clearly we didn't wait. We don't just wait. We've had numerous conversations with players and agents already. Ray noting that they've talked to agents before about the project, before Yoann Damet was signed and hired, and who the coach could be at that time. But now that you finalized it and moved on, you can get specific with a lot of those conversations. So if you're worried about the process, if you're worried about the fact that it took so long to hire Corey Ray, it took so long to hire Yoann Damet, now is it going to take even longer to sign players? This is very much a walking and chewing gum at the same time scenario. Corey Ray having all these conversations, putting feelers out, getting interest, saying who it could be, here's who we're looking at. And then now that they're signed, they can engage in those conversations a lot more seriously, whether it is domestically or abroad. I think that's something noteworthy, and it's almost reinforcing it. You hope that's the case. You want to believe, but hearing it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, is important to give fans a sense of security about this, right?
Yeah, and MLS transfer window is opening up in January. We'll definitely start hearing some rumors soon. It was very frustrating not having a sporting director and head coach for so long, but now that they've happened, everything seems to be moving quickly. Do you think this is a confirmation that we're going 3 at the back with wingbacks?
Confirmation? No. We'll talk about. I've got some style stuff in a minute, but since you mentioned it, I can go ahead and talk about it. So I think there are similarities with Damet's work in FCC and FC Cincinnati and Columbus. Stylistically, things that he tried to get across, there was definitely a clear note of possession first philosophy. There was an emphasis on keeping the ball with his time at interim coach at FC Cincinnati and the Columbus Crew. They were patient with it. They used structure to create those angles in space. A lot of what we were talking about earlier, where you're methodical. If you go back and watch the tape from 2025, Columbus Crew versus St. Louis City, that seems to be what Yoann wants to be doing. If you look at his experiences, even with FC Cincinnati, they didn't have the same quality as Columbus, but there was an intention behind moving to possession after he became the interim head coach. There was a build from the back, principles of building from the back that he used at FC Cincinnati. He used at Columbus, the back line being a core part of the progression, something that we kind of saw Olaf Melberg attempt to do, but almost haphazardly, where not only did you not have the quality and the buy-in from the front office, most notably on that, to have the players capable of doing this, but there was never a willingness to continue it. There was always a tepidness about it. And so you see a firmness about this in what Yoann Damet had. Comfortable defenders, progressive passing. That's a hallmark of a Yoann Damet led organization or implemented philosophy, and also midfield control. So using the midfield, whether it's 2 or 3, managing possession, using the pivots to rotate and creating overloads on those wings. And this is where we get a little bit into the differences. So counterattacking is the other similarity that I think we can look forward to in Yoann's style. But when you get to some of the differences, it's how they were implemented based on the formation. With FC Cincinnati, it was much more 4 in the back, using the double pivot. But with Columbus, is very much a wingback system. So I do wonder how much success he had in Columbus is going to carry forward in that shape. I think it's really going to depend on who Corey Ray can bring into the system. The flexibility, the versatility is going to be paramount. Are you going to bring in traditional wingbacks? You might try to, but there are too many holes in the system for me to say, is it going to be like it was in FC Cincinnati? We just need more quality players as far as the formation goes, not the results. Or is it going to be more of a formation like we saw in Columbus? My takeaway, Stu, honestly, is that Yoann Damet has experience in both. He knows how to lead both. He doesn't just come in like Olaf Melberg did and want to have a wingback system. That Olaf stuck to that almost very much to his detriment. Critchley very much stuck to a 4-2-3-1, very much wanted that to be the philosophy and believed that was the identity of St. Louis. But Yoann's a little bit of a wild card on this front. And that's why I'm looking forward to preseason, because if I see anybody out there telling me that Yoann Damet is going to implement 3 at the back unequivocally, or Yoann Damet is going to stick with 4 in the back, he's going to use fullbacks and he's going to have one bomb forward and he's going to drop another back. You have no data to go off of in that. There is, I cannot stress this enough, that there's nothing that anybody has that indicates one way or another, for 2 reasons. First of all, he hasn't been his own head coach. Maybe he was implementing Wilfried Nance's philosophy, but he thinks he can do it. He thinks there's a better way to do it with a different formation. That's possible. There's a lot of ifs in that scenario. But the other question is the roster itself. As the roster stands today, we barely have a roster capable of running 2 center backs, a left back, and a right back. We definitely don't have a roster capable of running 3 in the back at the moment. So the answer to this question, Stu, in my eyes, is probably based on who Corey Ray is going to be bringing in the next few weeks, in the next month or so. He brings in a top quality center back, maybe another center back. I could see 3 at the back. He brings in a player whose pedigree is at right back and is not a traditional wing back. Maybe we've got a little bit of an indication there, or same thing on the left side. Not enough data for me to know, but what I'm comfortable in knowing is that he has experience implementing both styles, and he knows what works with some, he knows what doesn't. And so I feel his vision can be clear depending on what you run with. And it might end up and I see Drew said in the chat, what did Justin say? Starts as a 4-2-3-1 and shifts to a 3 in the back. Justin Horniker. I think that this has merit to it because of what Corey Ray was saying to Tom Timmerman about how you have this fluidity in movement. So you might have a starting position of 2 center backs, a right back, and a left back, obviously. But as you morph the positioning, as you have your movements, you might need a right back capable of playing right center back, and your shape shifts a little bit into that. You might have a left back, vice versa, who's capable of playing as a left wing back if you shift over far enough, and your right wing becomes right wing back. These fluidity and movements could cause a really interesting conversation to occur next season, where we think about players differently. We think about a right back as a right center back or a right wing back in tandem. Or maybe we just think about it as this right back is better suited as a right back or a right center back. This left back is best suited as a left back or a left wing back. And you can have that versatility and flexibility in any given game state. That to me is probably the most exciting way to think about what formation we might use.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing Kyle Hebert bomb down the left side.
I'm done. Good night. I can't do it. Oh my gosh. I have flashbacks of preseason 2025 where it's a fairly grainy image. You saw it. I know you did. And we're trying to make out whose numbers are where. The lineup is the starting 11 comes out in alphabetical order. Thank you, John Gasparoni. And then you get a Kyle Hebert. There's no way he's playing a wing back. Is it? And then suddenly Kyle Hebert gets called offside on the right side at one point, and you know that the damage is done.
Yeah, but that's what if Coachella is just where Damet is going to just guard his cards, throw everything out there, throw everyone off, and we'll see.
He could try different positions, but I don't want to entertain that idea. How about that? It is December 18th as we record this. Christmas is right around the corner. It's a new year, a new era. It's the Yoann Damet era, and I am not willing to entertain that a player of wingback caliber that is Kyle Hebert is going to make an appearance at a wingback position at Coachella again next year. I'm not willing to entertain it, Stu.
Well, what's our back line with wingbacks right now? We would be looking at Orozco, Hebert.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is
Paul, Timo, Yarrow, and Totland. If Totland comes out of wherever he's been exiled to,
he'll make it out. I don't know what Totland's deal was with the previous regime, but that regime's not here anymore. I do want to mention David Critchley before we get too much into or a pivot into Yoann Damet a little bit, because we've got some things to talk about yet as far as our roster goes. Corey Ray was asked about David Critchley. He thanked him, acknowledged his role in the organization, And Ray said that they're discussing with him about his role in the club and keeping him here. He said that conversations are happening over the next couple of days. And this press conference was on Wednesday, December 17th. So next couple of days, next few days, Ray said that the club holds David Critchley in high regard and, quote, it will be great to keep him if we could. The press release for Yoann Damet, I believe, had comments about David Critchley and wanting him to continue to grow and develop in the organization. From Diego Gigliani. At the same time, we're incredibly grateful to David Critchley for his leadership as interim head coach and remain committed to his continued development within our club. Whether that means City 2 head coach again, going back, whether it means joining Yoann Damet's staff, yet to be seen. But I think we all have grown to really have a fondness for David Critchley. Really good dude. I mean, there's very few people who are as genuine as David Critchley in his knowledge and passion for the game. He definitely has a way of doing things as far as what he wants to implement. My only concern with David Critchley right now has nothing to do with the person, has nothing to do with how the players love him. My only concern is the idea that stylistically, if David Critchley joins Yoann Damet's staff, will he be able to implement what Damet is wanting to do? Because it does seem, Stu, like we're going to get a different St. Louis City team in 2026, does it not?
Yeah, absolutely. And Critchley, like you said, it's good to keep him in-house. He's a great guy. And he's kind of fit into where Damet was a couple of years ago as that young assistant who took over as the interim, and he's going to get looks too. So that will certainly factor into, I think, how he approaches City too, because he's still in the window kind of showing off his, CV to prospective employers for the future.
Fair.
How well will he implement what Damet gives him? I think will say a lot about what roster is he given
at
a future club. So I think he would be wise to implement it, and I think he will, and I think he'll do a good job doing it.
One note I have on Yoann Damet and his style of play. We've got to stop with these rhymes. This is getting a little hard to swallow. I'm gonna have to think about how to reword this. Maybe we just call him Yoann for a bit. I'm gonna try that. Yoann said at his press conference, as far as his style of play, because this plays directly into the conversation of keeping Critchley on his staff as an assistant, knowing that Critchley had the identity of St. Louis as the smash and grab, as the high pressing, high energy, verticality. He talked about wanting to possess the ball more, but he never really did. He always talked about field tilt, but he never really got that sense that they were owning the field tilt numbers. It was more quality over quantity for sure. And I have a tough time meshing that with what Yoann has implemented in any of his other stops. I mentioned about it, the possession-oriented philosophy. He does have counter-attacking, counter-pressing, so that would line up fairly well. But it's the possession and the control and the movements that was just not there under Critchley. So I worry about that dynamic because Yoann says they'll discover more during preseason, but he wants to bring a proactive approach. He did say with and without the ball, he wants to be proactive, and that means high pressing, but controlling on the front foot. Rooted in clarity and process, a need to set expectations for players on both sides as far as what they need to do ahead of time. And this does sound reminiscent to things that we've heard other coaches say. So the proof will be in the pudding once we see it in preseason. But Yoann talked about clarity that will drive a clear process and create a collaborative environment as they start this next chapter. He heavily emphasized how important preseason will be in building the way that they want to look and addressing potential positional and roster needs. Yoann said, for me, it's going to be about what we want to implement, but what we want to implement is what we think is the best way to make us win. This quote is important, and I bolded it on social media when I put it out there, because I do think that as much we heard Olaf Melberg talk about working with the roster, right? He mentioned at times until he actually started coaching that he would mold or play the roster, play them in the right positions, play the right formations based on the strength of the roster. He never did it. He was too rigid, too inflexible. But here we have Yoann Damet talking about the most important thing is what is the best way to get these guys to win games. And I think this lends itself to that formational flexibility just as much as everything else. So you find that balance in the 6 weeks of preseason that he talks about. And I do think he's going to be willing. He's going to be working with Ray on maybe what his ideal thing is, what he wants to implement. Hey, I want to implement a wing back approach, but I want them to be able to drop back into 4 in the back if we need to adjust mid-game. This is an ideal scenario to me. And the linchpin to it all is, who can we bring in? Can we bring in a left back that is capable of playing left wing back? Can we bring like a Giannis Horn, for instance? I think that was a fairly decent example of a left back to a left wing back. Thomas Totland can play right back to a right wing back, but you need these kinds of players so that you can start with one formation. And if you need to switch mid-game, you're capable of it. It's an extra dimension that we have never really seen from St. Louis City. Even if we've heard it discussed at times of flexibility, we've never really seen it. There is promise that we could see it with Yoann Damet.
Yeah, interesting. You mentioned Giannis Horn and Conrad Wallum, also very versatile players that we won't see one for sure in 2026 and likely won't see the other. So
right.
Have you heard any updates about Conrad Wallum?
No, Conrad Wallum, Henry Kessler, Devin Padelford, nothing new to report there, other than Henry Kessler was in Dallas the other day. He posted on his Instagram that he was in Dallas. So who knows what that means, whether he's just meeting with clubs at this point. No news. And I don't expect, like I said, to hear anything until January. I know Conrad Wallum was not on Slavia Prague's. He's not been playing with them. He's not been training with them. I still don't think he's a part of their plan. So I believe negotiations are still occurring with Slavia Prague for Conrad Wallum. If the transfer fee comes down, we might land him back. And that is the kind of player with his versatility and flexibility. We saw him play all over the field. That could fit this system extremely well. I do know that. And Devin Padelford with left back, left wing back. I do think there's flexibility there if we can land him somehow. But that type of profile, right?
And how does Yoann feel about those long throws that Padelford could bring?
Oh my gosh. God bless you, Tom Schwartz. Appreciate that. We've got the long throw questions coming hot and heavy. And I did like Corey Ray's response to it. He mentioned that the what do you call it? The traditionalists of the sport, is that how he worded it? Are very much anti that, but you got to roll with the times. It's becoming more and more prevalent to have a specialist, at least in the Premier League, among other leagues. And it did seem to come in handy at times when we needed it last year. So I think that's all I'm willing to talk about long throws for sure.
Yeah, it's not something that hasn't been around.
Yeah.
Pulis was using it years ago. It's been a staple in League Two in England. That's how you see some of those big up cup sets over the years. Teams, Premier League teams, not being used to defending kind of those long throws in the box. But no, I just had to wind you up a little bit.
Thanks, dude. The last thing I'll say before we move on to looking at, I think one thing I want to look at a different aspect to this, but before we move on from Yoann Damet's comments, Yoann said on what profiles matter to him the most in players. Because I asked him what on-field qualities matter, and he went to a profile perspective. He said, looking at players who are already here is what they're doing right now. Looking at others coming in, they're evaluating 3 main criteria. And Yoann Damet's 3 main criteria for evaluating players starts with looking at the grit and ensuring that they have hardworking players, awareness and coachability. So can players be flexible? A lot of what we've been talking about already. And then their craft. And by that, he means, can they be technically sound, where they can take some risks and initiatives, but also execute on them? We're not just talking about putting players into dangerous situations and watching them fail or hoping they can rise up, but proven players. And I think of a Tomas Ostrak caliber player where he's technically capable of going 1v1 with a player and dribbling around them, keeping possession as he roams through the midfield and having these progressive dribbles that can just carry us upfield. These seem to be qualities that Yoann Damet is prioritizing. And then he says you go to the individual player profiles. That's where they are now. So they're evaluating the current roster, which Yoann Damet has said he's already prioritized talking to everyone. So he considers himself a people manager. So does Corey Ray. He's already talked to all the players by now. He only had 4 to go by the time we did the press conference on Wednesday. So he's already reached out. He's already making those relationships, beginning those and building those from what he can as early as possible. And then you go individual player profiles. He says they're looking at the roster, future profiles to join the team as they making sure that they have the right caliber of players with these qualities. And then he doesn't view this as a challenge. He views it very much as an opportunity. He did note the difficult moments that he's faced with FC Cincinnati, entering MLS, great moments recently with Columbus, both things that have helped shape him, but making sure you don't dwell on the lowest of lows and you don't get too caught up in the highest of highs, and when good things continue to happen, you don't get complacent, those kinds of things. When Yoann was talking about St. Louis versus other opportunities, he said, quote, "The main thing is the people, meeting the ownership and Diego, knowing about Corey, definitely having vision of alignment and possibility that this could be real. Then the fans. Not many teams can say that they have the fan base that exists here in St. Louis." So Yoann's saying all the right things. The press conference wasn't super heavy on the most massive of details, but he was saying all the right things, Stu. I'm confident of that.
Yeah, the energies were great. Yoann, and I think Ray especially, from his introductory press conference and this one, he's a very disarming person at press conferences. He's got a lot of that charm. So if nothing else, I think our press conferences will be more entertaining. So I'm looking forward to some of those, especially after the wins, and hopefully there'll be many.
Couldn't agree more. Two more things I want to talk about before we get out of here. One is I'm going to borrow a segment from Red Smoke Rising, the new podcast from Tom Franklin, Jeremy Clements, and Jake Henry. So they did a segment where they looked at the manager hires in the first 3 seasons, and I'm borrowing their graphic as well. Thanks, guys. Check them out, Red Smoke Rising. Great pod. They do on Tuesdays, I believe. They posted these 5 of the last 6 teams in Major League Soccer, Inter Miami being the other one. And we're not touching on them because nobody wants to talk about Inter Miami more than we already have to. They don't play by the same rules in a lot of ways, or they find ways around things. The head coaches that have occurred in the first 3 seasons for each of these clubs. I'm going to let you look at this because if you're watching and if you're listening to this, St. Louis has had 5 total coaches now going into their 4th season. We got Bradley Carnell, John Hackworth interim, Olaf Melberg, David Critchley interim, and Yoann Damet. We had Charlotte FC over here as, let's see, Charlotte FC started with Miguel Angel Ramirez back in 2021, Christian Latanzio as an interim, then Christian Latanzio as the head coach, and then Dean Smith as their current coach for the past 2 years now. Austin had Josh Wolf, an interim of Davey Arnon, and Nico Estevez as the third coach. And Nashville SC had Gary Smith, Rumba Matali, and BJ Callahan. Gary Smith was their coach for all of their first 3 seasons. Alan Koch was FC Cincinnati's first coach, and then Yoann Damet, Ron Johns, Yoann Damet, was Japslava, and then I've got the chat here in my face, Stu. I can't see this.
It's Japstam.
Yeah. So that was their first, basically, 3 seasons, 2019, 2020, 2021. What I want to add to this is the records of these teams. So you see and you hear all these head coaches. St. Louis basically had a head coach every season almost. We're on our 5th actual person leading the sidelines, not full-time head coach, but 5th leader on the sidelines going into our 4th season. Charlotte has had 4 total coaches, counting interims here, 4 total coaches, with 3 total coaches, 4 total time periods, interim and then regular. Austin has had 3 coaches, Nashville has had 3, and then Cincinnati has been a dumpster fire. So records of these clubs, Cincinnati, I said, won the wooden spoon in their first 3 seasons, and then they jumped up to 5th in the East. So we're looking at how bad these teams were in their first 3 seasons, how they performed, but then the jump to the 4th, because that's what St. Louis is doing. We're in our 4th season. We want to see and compare ourselves to these. Nashville was 6th in the East, 2nd in the East, 5th in the West, and then 7th in the East. So they remained kind of middling throughout, but they had consistency. Nashville, with 1 coach throughout their first 3 seasons, was a consistent bottom tier playoff team, with that 2nd in the East exception. So fairly decent. So that leads to this consistency here. Nashville was probably the best team of these 5 in their first cumulative 3 seasons, 6th, 2nd, 5th, and then going into their 4th, they were 7th. Austin, 12th, 2nd, 12th, and then in their 4th season, they were 10th. So they had that one aberration and it all went back into the dumpster. 12th, 2nd, 12th, and then in their 4th season, they were 10th. Charlotte was 9th in the East, 9th in the East, 5th in the East, and 4th in the East. So Charlotte, with their head coach, they figured it out in 2022. So if you look at this, they hired Miguel Angel Ramirez ahead of their first season. They fired him in May of their first season. Latanzio was there until the end of their second season. Then Dean Smith took over for their third season. And that correlated to Dean Smith taking over, leading them to a 5th place and then a 4th place finish. So you finally right the ship after the initial couple coaches. Austin with Josh Wolf. Josh Wolf was their head coach for basically all of these first 3 seasons, 2020, 2021, 2022. And they were 12th, 2nd, 12th, and then they went to be 10th. So one head coach with a 2nd place finish, and the otherwise was pretty terrible. But St. Louis is different than all these other teams, where you had one coach that has pretty consistent results in Nashville, one coach in Austin who has terrible, great, terrible, terrible, and then Charlotte, who had bad, and then started to rise once you found their 3rd full-time head coach. St. Louis started off the best of them all, first in the West, and then we dropped into 12th, 13th, and now yet to be seen with Yoann Damet. So unlike these other teams, if you want to look at these comparisons, my takeaway here is the fact that unlike these other teams, I feel like we have had to hit the reset button on our organization a lot harder than these other teams, where they've had Dean Smith come in and he had a modicum of success in year 3 for Charlotte. Josh Wolf found success and they let him run these other seasons until he just failed. Now still they're using Nico Estevez to try to get back. This to me, Yoann Damet, is where St. Louis could be turning it around, similar to where some of these other teams turned it around in year 4 into year 5.
Yeah, it's some of these names are just a blast from the past. We mercilessly made fun of Charlotte for Angel Ramirez and kind of the dumpster fire that they had on their front office that first year. And, 3 years later,
We did.
Egg on our face because it's been pretty bad on our side. Gary Smith was also mocked for being kind of a boring, stable coach, but he really set up Nashville with a firm foundation. And he actually came on board in 2018 for their first 2 USL seasons. They were in USL Championship 2018 and 2019 before they transitioned to MLS. So he was around for a while. FC Cincinnati, I would say, I know you said we've hit the hard reset. They really hit 3 hard resets. Alan Koch was supposed to be their long-term lifer coach, and he just fell apart.
He was the one who led them into Major League Soccer. He was hired in 2017 and they joined Major League Soccer in 2019. They had a terrible plan from the get-go. And I think that's why FC Cincinnati is unique to me, because they had to hit the reset button because they failed so miserably. They were trying to build all this momentum from USL. They had a new stadium that they were trying to get across the finish line at the time. And the problem with FC Cincinnati is more so than us with our knee-jerk reaction people felt to Bradley Carnell, and FC Cincinnati, kind of like Charlotte, they hit the stop button so quickly. Alan Koch was fired in May of their first season, just like Miguel Angel Ramirez at Charlotte was fired in May of their first season. They saw these were going wrong, like St. Louis saw that Olaf Melberg was going wrong this year, and we called it. So that's where maybe you could draw some similarities, is in an early season in an expansion team's tenure, you had FC Cincinnati immediately hit a panic button. It didn't get better for them because they didn't also work on the roster. They didn't also fix a lot of decision. Didn't they have a terrible decision maker as their sporting director? Wasn't it Birding, Jeff Birding, I think it was, who took over the sporting department, but he had no experience.
Yeah, he was their president. He still might be their president, but I mean,
he found somebody to run the sporting department though.
Yeah.
Then with Charlotte, they had Tepper still runs the show. Tepper runs the entire show. Their owner, but they hit the reset button. They let Latanzio run it out, and they gave him the job. It worked for 2 years, and then they found Dean Smith, who actually has led them to a level of success. And we basically, our first couple of seasons were just wild in how they started and how we tried to respond to it. I think we've long said that first season in first place set St. Louis up for failure long term. And Olaf Melberg in 2025 was our hard reset. When we fired Melberg in May of 25, it wasn't just Melberg. It was Lutz, Hack left. This is our version of the resets that I think caused teams like Charlotte and Cincinnati to then rise up as well as they did. I'm not saying it's going to happen immediately, but that's my correlation to some of these expansion teams and what has happened to St. Louis in 25 going into 26.
Totally agree. Looking forward to it. Really looking forward to 2026 season now.
Well, we have that. I mean, that's a perfect segue, Stu, to our final topic of the night, which is the roster at hand. So this could be the final episode of Flyover Footy before the new year. We have Christmas next week. We have New Year's the week after. We're in the middle of Hanukkah. Kwanzaa is coming up. If you sell, I don't want to be exclusive of anything. The holidays are here. And so with the holidays here, let's do a look at our roster going into probably January 2026. The roster as it stands now. It's not complete. That's probably the takeaway. It's not done. We have 5 open roster slots on our senior roster, 2 open roster slots on our supplemental, and a lot of movement that could be done. We have no players we've put on loan yet. We have no players in slot 31, which is that season-long loan to City 2. Jake Girdwood-Wright remains on loan to Auckland FC in New Zealand, and by all accounts is excelling there. So I would be kind of shocked if we brought him back with our option that we have to bring him back in January. So he seems like he's down there until the end of his loan. Might look to sell him. I don't know. But the roster that we have here is incomplete. Holes to fill as far as the actual number of players on the roster. Holes to fill when it comes to international spots. We have 3 available international slots going into next season. So there's a lot of room to sign international players. And we have flexibility in the roster construction model that we could have for 2026. We only have 2 designated players under contract right now, Marcel Hartl and Roman Berkey. We only have 3 U22 players under contract right now, JGR, who, yes, still takes up a U22 slot, even though he's on loan. And no, please don't ask me about that because it just frustrates me more about the John Hackworth era after Lutz left. Songbin Zhang and Flu Fall are other U22 players. So 2 DPs, 3 U22s. We could either sign another DP and go with the designated player model of 3 DPs, 3 U22s, or we could sign another U22 and get $2 million in GAM for this next season. We are already flush in GAM. So Corey Ray, while he doesn't have a ton, like an SKC level of roster building to do, which I think they have over half of their roster left to build, he does have flexibility. So this is what John Hackworth has set up for us before he left. This is what Diego helped facilitate with John Hackworth after Lutz left. This is Lutz's parting gift as well. Most all of this roster was signed by Lutz. And so this is what Corey Ray has to work with. And if you take this roster and you put it into a depth chart, things start to get a little wonky. If you assume that we stick with a 4-2-3-1, at least for right now, for conversational sake, you're looking at Roman Berkey starting at goal. You're looking at starting center backs of Falou Fall and Timo Baumgartel. Haziel Orozco kind of has to play left back because we don't have anybody else capable of it. Thomas Totland is our right back. Our center mids would be Edu Leuven and Chris Durkin. Our left mid would probably be Celio Pompeu. Our center attacking mid, the number 10, would be Marcel Hartl. Right mid would be Songbin Zhang, and our striker would be Klaus. We have depth of players like Simon Betcher, Mackay Joyner, Cedric Toyshirt, Thomas Ostrak, Brendan McSorley, Miguel Perez, Josh Aro, Kyle Hebert, Tyson Pierce, Ben Lunt, and Christian Oliveras. So this is not a well-constructed team at the moment. There are positives, definitely. Klaus, Hartl, Leuven, Fall, Berkey. You could say next tier would probably be Baumgartel, Totland, Songbin, Durkin, and then Ostrak could obviously play center mid. So there's enough to build off of, but there are a ton of holes. And Stu, Corey Ray said the first priority is the back line. When you see this back line, whether you talk about a 2 center back or a 3 in the back look, where's your rank these for me? Where's your numbers 1, 2, and 3 priority here?
Well, number 1 priority is going to be, a left back, or convincing Thomas Totland, making sure that, he's sweet talking him, making sure he's known that he's part of the plans for 2026. So, left back, you have to bring in another right back, or probably 2 left backs immediately, and then potentially a full back that can play left and right side, unless you trust Tyson Pierce. But even if you trust Tyson Pierce, you need another senior player above that.
Yeah.
And then, you have gaps in the midfield that are just shocking. I guess before you go to the midfield, even the center back depth, how healthy is Timo Baumgartel going to be this year? So right now, as it stands, all four of those center backs would see a lot of minutes. I don't think that's a recipe for a lot of successful soccer in 2026. So when you look at the the most depth we have is on the attacking side, which I guess is a positive, but he wasn't lying when he was saying that back line is well, he put it nicer than I would, in which it's a mess.
It's a big mess. And I probably agree with you. Left back is where he was honing in on, because you can't count Haziel Orozco as a left back. It just doesn't work that way if you're going into a season. Haziel Orozco can play in a pinch. He played there in a lot of pinches in 2025, but that's the spot to me. When Corey Ray talks about the back line, it's left back. Center back is an absolute need to improve. You cannot go into the season with Kyle Hebert and Josh Arrow as your next two center backs. And especially if you want to have any semblance of flexibility to move to a three in the back. Now, ideally, I would say you find a right back or a left back that can play almost opposites, where you complement each other. One can play as a left back and a wing back, and the other can play as a right back or a right center back, or vice versa. I think ideally you could do that on both sides. That's a perfect world, but that's a lot to ask in how you build this roster. And maybe you don't have a lot of players who fit those profiles, but I think that gives you your best chance to have this flexibility that Damet might have been alluding to. When you get higher up on the field, I think you have problems with the potential way in which we understand Damet's style to likely be personified. If you're going to possess the ball more, if you're going to look to draw in the defense, if you're going to look to pass the ball around a little bit more, kind of pump those possession numbers up, you're not going to be stretching the field as much. You're not going to be sending the ball long. You're not going to be making runs by your wingers in behind the back line. So you look to Celio Pompeu and you look to Sang Bin Zhang and you think, ooh, how well suited might they be to this new city philosophy, this adjustment to what we've been doing? Because yeah, they might be good at high pressing, like Damet said they still want to do. But when you talk about possessing and playing in front of the defense and being good ball handlers, Celio has a good step over and a good shot. He can be good in 1v1 scenarios. I don't know if the 1v1 scenario or the running in behind the back line translates to team-based play when you possess the ball in the attacking third. And I definitely haven't seen enough from Sang Bin in that kind of a philosophy to say that I'm comfortable with him in that style. In fact, I think that's one of the reasons he fell out of favor in Minnesota, is because they started to possess the ball a little bit more or moved away from his strengths, and then he stopped seeing significant time. So I worry about our wide mids and our wingers if we're talking about this, whether it's a seismic shift or even a decently sized adjustment into possession-based play.
Yeah, I mean,
so you agree?
I do agree. I mean, I can't say I know exactly how they're going to fit into the system. I was trying to actually look up real quick when Sangbin's minutes dropped off in Minnesota, if it correlated with Tani, how much more time he saw. But you kind of caught me slightly flat-footed on that.
Nah, it's okay. I see a comment here from LJ Edits 99. An idea here: if Toyshirt is healthy, if he's good, I would move Hartle to the left and Toyshirt starting cam. Move Celio to the bench. Seti and Hartle did good when we had John Hackworth as coach. And positionally, yeah, I definitely agree. It's not something outside the realm. I just worry about limiting Marcel Hartle's scope of work on the field. He's just so good whenever he has the ball, and when he's given that opportunity to have the vision across the field and help out on both sides. If we had better options, and not saying Seti's not a better option, but as long as we had options to fill those other places, Hartle is perfect wherever he can fit. He can play both wide mids. My only thing with Marcel Hartle, and I even had this conversation with you guys about maybe you look at moving Marcel Hartle back into the central midfield. And I said that only with the caveat of Hartle is such an elite player in comparison to everybody else on this roster. He is without a doubt the best field player that we have. I would fight anyone who said otherwise. So with that in mind, you could put Hartle on the left side. You could put him in the central attacking mid. You could put him at center mid, as long as you have replacement caliber players in those other roles. So we could sign a center attacking mid or a left mid that are of the caliber of a Marcel Hartle. If we were to do that, I'd be comfortable with Marcel Hartle moving his position, playing deeper on the field or on the right side. He's such a good player no matter where you put him. And that comment really illustrates that he was so good on the left side that he can play. And we know how good he was when he had to drop back to the sixth, even though it took him out of the attack. And the problem was we didn't have a replacement level player for him. That's my only caveat of I'm willing to see Hartle move over to numerous positions. You just have to be able to replace him with a caliber that is of him or better. Said he might approach that at center attacking mid if he's totally healthy. But the problem with Cedric Toysher, guys, is he's not healthy right now. His comment at the end of the season was he hopes to be healthy for preseason, and it did not sound optimistic. So I'm going in this putting Toysher behind these other players because I don't know if he's going to be healthy and when he's going to have that opportunity to start. And we can't count on him in a starting caliber role going into the season yet because of that. But Stu, we do have a question about what about Mekhi Joyner? And what do we see with his development going into 2026? Do you think that Mekhi Joyner is ready to push a Celio Pompeu or someone in that left mid role? And how do you actually think Joyner might be suited for play under Yoann Damet?
I'm not sure if I'm the best one to answer that question. I think I'll leave that to you. But I think ideally for me, Joyner is a guy who sees probably 8 to 10, potentially 8 to 10 starts over the course of this season. So, and overall probably, 900 minutes total. So I don't see him as a guy who's ready yet to be a full-time starter. And hopefully he's not forced into that role by injuries. But he definitely showed enough last year that I think he's a, contributing squad player on this team. And he's not just a warm body that's being thrown out there to suck up minutes. So if I would guess his minutes and kind of the profile he fits in from that perspective, that's where I'd fall. I'm not entirely sure about where he fits in though, specifically under Yoann.
Yeah, and there's a lot of unknowns here. Positionally, the player profiles, that this is not being referred to as a rebuild, but holy cow, does it have to be a reset? And this roster itself could look different come January. We could look to sell some of these players. We could look to make trades. One important thing to note as we finish this conversation is Corey Ray did seem to, and he called this a project that it would take potentially, what did he say on signing new players? Corey Ray said, there are obvious answers in terms of openings. It's clear there are certain positions to target first, and as discussions evolve, it will focus on profiles, squad evolution over the next 6 to 12 months. This is not a one window fix. This is the beginning of a new era, and optimistically, we have a new head coach that has his own ideas of identity, and we have a front office that has bought into this new head coach unilaterally with this alignment conversation. Now we need to see the beginnings of turning it around from what we saw in 2025. Because otherwise we're going to end up back where we were after 24, where we had John Hackworth leading this team into a better position. Olaf Melberg lost all of that momentum. David Critchley had this team behind him. He had the support of the team, and he was turning it around towards the end of the season. It ended up being too little too late from a Critchley perspective in being given the keys after what he was able to turn the team into. They wanted to go a different direction, unfortunately for Critchley, but time will tell whether it's unfortunately for the team. And my point is, we don't want to be at the beginning of 2026 in the same boat again. And one of the biggest issues that we had with Olaf Melberg is there was a misalignment between what Melberg was doing and wanted to do versus what the front office was giving him. And I don't feel that is an issue now. I'm confident that what I'm hearing, that's not an issue. And that Diego has learned from that because he was a part of that too. I'm confident right now, as we sit in December, that the team has learned from that. But the next few weeks, the next transfer window is going to be huge to start to give Yoann Damet the players that can play and the players that Corey Ray wants to turn this team into. That's the key. So give them time, give them grace, understand that they're being honest about this. Corey Ray's talking about the next 6 to 12 months, squad evolution. So this should not be a surprise come February when we start the season that we might still have holes or we might still have players who don't perfectly fit the profile. They're holdovers. This is the organizational turnover that's occurring. Bear with them. Trust in the process right now because that's all we can do. And I think they've earned it at this point from the openness and honesty that they've been talking to us about. That will occur throughout the calendar year of 2026. So that maybe by the sprint season in 27 and then the schedule shift in 27 and 28, the full roster has been realized by Yoann Damet and Corey Ray and Diego Gigliani, and everyone begins to have an alignment in the roster construction as much as they do the completeness of the roster construction as they do with the front office head coach alignment that's going on right now. Stu, any parting words before we go?
Other than alignment. No, in the chat, David asked if Damet is going to get 12 months. And yes, I think barring a complete locker room collapse, I would expect him to get him and Corey at least 12 months.
And he follows up with, management was so impatient with Cardinal that I worry that management is essentially gone. Diego is the only one left. And I believe that Diego is putting the people in place knowing that this is his show as leader of this organization. He obviously has Corey Ray report to him, but he seems to be giving Corey Ray the keys to operate on player selection for the SuperDraft and et cetera. So the idea here is that I don't think we're going to see an impatience as long as we don't see a 15 match losing streak. Like the honesty that we've seen from the club about the length of time this is going to take to put this squad together the way that they want it to evolve to their ideal scenario. They're honest about it. And you're not short with a head coach if you are telling fans that you're working on squad evolution over the next 6 to 12 months, because that's hamstringing the coach, not fair to the coach in a lot of different ways. And it's setting the wrong expectation for fans. And I don't think they're going to do that.
Yeah, I don't think they can at this point. And Olaf came in with higher expectations. So yeah, we are a little more impatient, but I think everyone could tell from the beginning or near the beginning that something was off and it just wasn't going to last. So we'll give it time and we'll show up, make noise, and have fun in 2026. I'm looking forward to it.
So am I. 2025 is basically a wrap here on Flyover Footy. But before we go, I do want to give a plug to our friends, the St. Luligans. This Saturday, December 20th at 6 p.m., the Luligans are throwing their holiday party at Second Shift Brewery. So if you are listening to this before Saturday evening, try to stop by. It's a toy drive, so bring a toy, enjoy festivities, food and drink from Second Shift, and just enjoy the camaraderie of fellow St. Louis City fans. I'll be there, hopefully with my family. I think we're doing zoo lights on Saturday, so hopefully we'll all be able to go there afterwards. Looking forward to it. It's always a good time. Thank you so much for joining us this episode and always on Flyover Footy. I've missed y'all this past few weeks. I told you we'd be back when there's news to talk about. I don't want to just fill dead air. Sometimes I'll do it because I'm long-winded like that sometimes, but the break has been kind of nice and I was itching to get back. Happy Stu was able to join me. And my Christmas gift that I'm still working on for Stu is a webcam and a proper backdrop. It will happen in 2026. I mark my words.
We'll make it happen.
So thank you for joining us on this edition of Flyover Footy. If we don't have a new episode before the holidays, happy holidays, happy new year. We'll see you on the other side. And if we do talk to you between now and then, it means we have players to talk about. So either way, have a good one, folks. Appreciate y'all. And we'll talk to you later. And as always, go City.
Go City.
All right. I assume when I hit this end stream here in a second, we're going to drop off. But I do want to say thank you for tuning in live. You guys are the real heroes for joining in with this chat. It's new software that we're using, so it's all a trial and error. And I hope you had a good time. I hope this worked out well for you. Don't pay attention to the fact that I somehow spelled Yoann Damet's name wrong on the stream at first. That will not be the case when this drops on pods, and I will be editing this on YouTube. So just try to ignore that. Won't happen again. But again, thanks for sticking around, folks. Appreciate y'all. Happy holidays, and we'll talk to you later.